Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you could join today. And that's fantastic. It's great to see people are starting to introduce themselves in the chat box. Welcome to the kickoff Global Campaign for Education US January 2024 Coalition Meeting. My name is Jennifer Rigg. I have had the distinct honor of serving as Executive Director at GCE-US since 2015, and before that as a coalition member with organizations around the coalition table, in person, virtual, and hybrid. Please introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat box with your name, your organizational affiliation, where you're Zooming in from today as well. And for today's event, we have captioning available in English. Just a couple of quick housekeeping pieces to turn on the captions and the like. You can select the CC for closed captioning at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And in the chat, we're sharing links and resources, inviting you to please join us in taking action to advance equality and inclusive education for all. For participants in the US and with networks and colleagues in the United States, please reach out today, especially as we're getting ready next week for International Day of Education, to urge your members of Congress to fully fund global education and to reauthorize the READ Act. And we'll speak a little bit more about that later as well. Throughout this session, we really want to have as much interaction with participants as possible, and we invite you to pose your questions, your comments, your ideas in the Zoom chat box. Today's event will feature an incredible keynote speaker with discussion and Q&A. And so without further ado, we're really delighted to welcome Dr. Joanne Carter, who's the Executive Director of Results. She's been a part of Results in a variety of capacities for over 20 years. Many of you have seen the agenda for today with her full bio, and we'll make sure to share that in the chat as well. Results is an amazing movement of passionate, committed, everyday people who are using their voices to influence political decisions that will bring an end to poverty. Under Joanne's direction, Results leads advocacy campaigns to create more equitable policies and drive billions of dollars of government investment towards the highest impact solutions to poverty. She joined Results initially not only as a volunteer, but as legislative director in 1992, was appointed associate executive director in 2007, became executive director in 2008. And under her leadership, Results has grown to include chapters and grassroots volunteers in every state across the United States, with advocacy partnerships around the world. Prior to joining Results staff, Joanne served as Results volunteer group leader and then regional coordinator for 4 years in the New York City area. Joanne has served in a range of board governance and advisory roles. We're especially honored and excited and just so grateful for her leadership that she's been a founding board member of the Global Campaign for Education US, and GCE-US's work, as many of you know, was wonderfully grown and incubated at Results with their leadership. So Dr. Joanne Carter holds a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from Cornell University. She was a practicing veterinarian earlier in her career. She has served as a VISTA volunteer and as a recruiter for the Peace Corps. So Joanne, we're just super honored to be able to welcome you to speak with us today. It's such an important time in the global education space, and thank you for your leadership. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, Jen, for that kind intro. And thanks for inviting me to be part of this kickoff. I'm honored, and right back to you. Like, I'm really proud to have been a founding board member and had the chance to support GCE, but also support your leadership and your work, Jen. So I'm excited to be with so many allies with a shared commitment to global education as a right for every child, and folks who are focusing on the barriers that far too many children still face and the really critical role that the U.S. government can play in this. So again, Jen, huge thanks and acknowledgement to you and to the small but mighty team for all the work to build and lead this diverse and powerful coalition. And I really appreciate the expertise in this virtual room together. And I hope we can really use a lot of the time this morning for discussion, because that feels really important. But I thought I would just start with a few reflections on how I'm thinking about this moment on education from an advocacy perspective. And I know that we have lots of folks with expertise in education programming and research and ministry perspectives online today. Again, as you heard from Jen, as a result, government advocacy is really the core of our work, with that network of volunteers from all across the US really at the heart of our model, working with their members of Congress on tackling the root causes of poverty and inequity, which really includes and has since the beginning of results the right to education. So a few thoughts first, kind of on the moment we're in politically. What's at stake for education, some of the challenges we face, which again, many of you are facing even more so on the front lines. And then some of how I'm thinking about the implications for policy and resourcing for education. So again, domestically in the US, not news to folks, but the challenges of a stalled annual foreign aid appropriations process, dysfunction in the House of Representatives, which has made even basic governing a challenge over long periods of the last year. Candidly some lackluster support, or let's say leadership for basic education funding from the administration and the Senate, in no way opposition, but not the level of championing we need. And, and clearly election year risks to bipartisan cooperation on important and, certainly non-controversial legislation like the READ Act reauthorization, though, more to say about the work we all continue to do to push this and progress we're seeing. And then globally, again, looking to those more on the front lines, what the world is facing in terms of horrific conflict, climate emergencies, both the physical violence and displacement and the structural violence of poverty that are cutting kids off from access to education and the learning that's their right, and especially for children in communities already pushed to the margins. And these escalating humanitarian needs rightly are getting attention and resources, but sometimes and too often that can come at the expense of ongoing needs like the global learning crisis. And we have to make sure that's not the case. And also seeing democratic backsliding, installed government accountability in far too many places, which we know has consequences for education, and budgetary pressure on education accounts due to debt crises in dozens of countries, competing priorities among international donors, and shrinking fiscal space for education in national budgets. And of course, this is against the backdrop where we've seen out of school numbers increasing again and the profound learning gap, with 90% of school-age children in many countries still not getting the foundational learning that is their right. And I lay that out, not to sort of depress us, but to speak to, I think that when the challenges are this big, I think the temptation for policymakers and sometimes for advocates is actually to negotiate ourselves down and to rationalize that our goals might be too aspirational, or that political realities or the setbacks of crisis make them impossible. But I think it's not acceptable that we shrink our vision. We have to demand better. And the devastation of this moment is real, but how we respond is up to us. And action doesn't always guarantee change, but it does make it possible. And if we negotiate ourselves down, I think we risk failing before we've even begun. So I would just say, in framing, I think we need to stay committed to bold funding requests for USAID's critical education programs, and to make sure that GPE is fully resourced and that it's set up for success in its next replenishment to play the full catalytic role that we know it can and that is needed. I think we need to stay committed to policy changes that will strengthen kids' access to school and access to quality learning, to early childhood development, social emotional learning, foundational literacy, numeracy, and the nutrition and other supports that make quality education possible, and to broader financing landscape and accountability that can help make all of that possible with donors like the US, at the global financial institutions, and at country level. And I know top of mind for results in a lot of this coalition is our shared work on the READ Act. Jen, you led with that, which I love. We need to persist. Despite the broader political dysfunction, this bill is primed and ready to move. I've been in Washington a little over 30 years now, as you heard, like working on legislation like this. And we have seen this so many times before, that bills can get stuck right before the finish line for a long time, but eventually we break that logjam. And, I actually said something like this, in fact, to our grassroots network back in November, that they'd been working hard for months to get co-sponsors and build support for the READ Act, but it didn't seem to be moving, but to hold on, and 2 days later, it passed the Senate. And I'm also reminded, and I know some folks know this as well, but I'm also reminded when the READ Act was first passed, and I know some of you remember this, but we had been working on this bill, originally the Education for All Act, for years. And I think a lot of us forget, it actually passed the House on January 24th, 2017, 4 days after the inauguration of President Trump. And this was in the midst of the women's marches and arguably one of the most fraught political moments in a century. And yet it passed on a voice vote. And then that September, it was signed into law. And I think the part that nobody would have predicted is that it was actually the legislative vehicle for a big bipartisan deal on hurricane supplemental funding, a continuing resolution, and a debt ceiling increase. Because in order to move those budget pieces, it's a bit of US sort of legislative policy. Congressional leadership needed a legislative vehicle that was already primed to go to the president's desk. And with so little moving in a bipartisan way in both houses, they actually chose the READ Act. And there would have been a chance that they could have stripped out all the language of the READ Act and just used it as a convenient vehicle, but they didn't. And I think it just showed, that there was bipartisan support and certainly no opposition to this, and that bill became law. So I'm not naive about the situation in front of us, though I think we're just literally hearing, some positive news about the potential for this to move in the House Foreign Affairs Committee next month. But I share that history as a reminder that sometimes the victories come in unexpected ways, but they don't if we don't push for them. So again, Senate has already passed S41 in terms of the READ Act reauthorization. Now it's time for the House to do the same with HR 681. And, again, we need to keep the pressure on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, urging them to mark up in February before any more precious time is lost. Bill has immense bipartisan support, including many sponsors to sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee. As Jen said at the beginning, we need to get this done. And through our collective advocacy that we've been building on, but our collective advocacy now and going to the next month and onward in 2024 as we need it, I know we can get this done. Again, our action isn't a guarantee of change, but it does make it possible. And I would say some of the same principles drive my view on the annual appropriations, the annual budget and appropriations process to secure US funding for global education. It is a mess and a political challenge right now, and I don't dispute that. But I don't think that's a justification to lower our baseline. Because when we negotiate ourselves down, we don't do the cause any favors. I'm under no illusion that we will magically secure a major increase in funding this year. But I worry that if we come in with lower requests and less ambition, that will only be used by the administration and the Congress to lower their ambition even further. So just to say, Results is fully committed to keep the same bold ask of $1.2 billion for FY25 with $200 million for the Global Partnership for Education. And I think it's counter to our role as advocates to lower our own ask when they're aligned with need and also, in my view, reasonable. We're not asking to double funding, and the need has only gone up. I think there is far more downside than upside in underselling the need and stepping back from years of powerful upward pressure. So staying committed to bold funding ask both for USAID and its critical programs and for GPE, and getting the READ Act signed into law are among the most fundamental things I think this coalition can do this year. But just a few other thoughts to throw out there before a broader conversation. And again, I think folks who are really smart advocates, you all know this, but just to say again, the importance of champion building on Capitol Hill, supporting our champions and building new ones. GCE, with support from Results and others, co-hosted an event on the READ Act in September. And we were joined by not one, but two former Republican chairs of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, plus the incomparable Nita Lowey via video, as a testament to how they had been supported to lead on education when they were in office. And we've seen the way in which people like Representative Grace Meng have stepped into new leadership roles in education. We need to support them as champions and also continue to build that broader base of bipartisan congressional support, getting members to take initial actions, in the work that we do this year, and then moving them up a ladder of leadership on this issue, because that base of support is so critical going forward this year and then into 2025. And on education policy, I'm really thrilled that Results is about to launch a new analysis of USAID's role in tackling the global learning crisis. And we'll release it next week. It's called Building on Strong Foundations, and we hope it can be a tool to support all of you with evidence and policy recommendations. And it's a companion piece that was actually developed by our Results colleagues in the UK, looking at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office policies. And my colleague Meg, who is our education policy lead, will come back to the coalition with more details before we launch on the International Day of Education, and she'll be taking up some of the discussion coming out today. But the report lays out a series of recommendations and aims to push USAID to increase basic education investment, particularly in countries with higher learning poverty, to ensure that USAID policies and programs reach children with the greatest needs, including girls and children in remote, vulnerable, and crisis-impacted communities, and to partner with USAID to sharpen reporting and to increase data transparency so that we, as allies and champions, can amplify the impact of US foreign aid investments in education and advocate for increases. So stay tuned for more on the report soon. And there are also other key policy areas to focus on too: universal early childhood development, social emotional learning, and strengthening disability inclusive education, and more. And another big area on my mind, that I'm starting to think about, is this next replenishment of the Global Partnership for Education. Because the GPE is such a powerful tool for increasing leverage and reach of funding. And as the only fund of its kind, GPE has spent nearly 20 years helping governments invest in innovative solutions to get all children in school and learning. Since 2002, estimated 116 million more kids have attended school with GPE support, and 67 million more children have had access to quality teachers in partner countries. So before the last replenishment, together we engaged dozens of members in both the House and Senate who co-sponsored a bipartisan resolution in support of GPE. And a bipartisan group of 110 members of Congress signed a letter specifically calling for $1 billion pledge over 5 years for GPE. And that's consistent with their ask now of $200 million for next year. We're yet to secure all of that funding, but over the last decade, we've kept steadily increasing GPE's funding, even when many other accounts stayed flat. And this didn't happen magically. It happened because we continued to push hard for it and built the congressional leadership to get it done. I think the other 2 points I'd make before closing, the importance of the public sector. Really critically, I think we have to be even louder in our advocacy for US support to strengthen democratic public education systems in particular. We have to hold governments and donors accountable and ensure that schooling remains in the public domain as a right and out of the hands of private actors such as for-profit private schools, because national governments are the primary duty bearers on ensuring that children can have access to their right to education. And then finally, one final thought on the World Bank. I think this year is a really interesting opportunity on education in the context of the World Bank. With policymakers and leaders globally looking at how the World Bank and the broader development finance architecture can better support the world, lots of attention is rightly going to global challenges like climate and conflict, as well as the need to address the overall scale of finance with needs in the trillions of dollars. But it's less clear where the priority list, on that priority list, education might fall without more advocacy. Because I think if we aren't vigilant, these new needs come, not in addition to, but risk to being at the expense of longstanding challenges like education, which frankly have the support of ministries of finance that know how important this is. The latest World Bank IDA replenishment process will happen this year. So the replenishment for the low interest lending arm of the World Bank supporting, again, the lowest income countries. And it will likely be the largest pool of development finance ever made available. with a series of key political steps over the coming months that'll determine both the scale of the funding, but also the direction for its use. And even a modest adjustment in the portion of funds available for education could represent a step change in the total resource pool, for better or for worse. And I think it's just a really key window, both to make sure that education remains a priority and to think deeply about opportunities for policy commitments within IDA. So those are just a few of the key areas on my mind going into this new year. I would just end by saying, as always, I'm really grateful for this partnership and coalition, the chance to work together, and really excited to hear what others are thinking for 2024. And Jen, again, thanks for your leadership and the leadership that GCE is providing. And I'll turn it back to you. And I think we have some time for open conversation and dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Amazing. We really appreciate your tremendous leadership. And building on what you were just mentioning on the World Bank front, to kick off the discussion, thanks to Meg and others, we have a couple of questions, and we'd love to hear from all of you. Please share your ideas, comments, questions, and the like in the chat box. So with so many competing global demands, including war in the Middle East, the Russia and Ukraine conflict, climate change, and other emergencies, how can we ensure that the basic human right to quality inclusive education for all children and youth remains a central priority for governments and international institutions like the World Bank? I think, Joanne, you spoke to the importance of our collective advocacy together, and would love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear everybody's ideas on what more can we be doing to make sure that education is a top priority.
Do you want folks to raise their hands and kind of get a chance to hear from folks on that?
Sure, happy to. If you, Joanne and Meg, have any thoughts that you would find that you'd like to kick things off with. I mean, I think you understand the World Bank and IMF work so very well, and what's coming up. So we'd welcome any insights as well. Thanks, Joanne.
Yeah. I could say a few thoughts about the World Bank. Well, I think, and maybe more broadly, I mean, again, some of the more broadly, what do we need to do is, my thoughts are not, or might be pretty obvious, but I think that whole point of continuing the work that GCE is leading, that we're doing is building the political support for this in the US, just getting, supporting our champions to really be public as champions and push this forward, but also creating those opportunities, whether it be appropriation sign letters, whether it be letters in support of the GPE replenishment, where members of Congress can really step up on this, and we have chances to ask them to take leadership and build a bench of leaders and champions, but also allies, is just really critical. And I think also linking up with allies in other countries around some of this kind of global work, whether that be a GPE replenishment or whether that be influencing the World Bank. And there's been a lot of work done over the last decade or more to really frame World Bank priorities around ending extreme poverty and around what they call human capital investments. And there is no more meaningful human capital investment than education. And I think folks know that. I think somewhat that is getting swamped by the newest urgencies. I was with a group of parliamentarians in Marrakesh at the World Bank annual meetings in October, and with parliamentarians from Africa, and one of the parliamentarians in Cote d'Ivoire said, these urgent crises are critical, but we can't allow the urgent to sweep away the important. And I think coming back with that ourselves and figuring out also ways to engage allies like Congress to be communicating those messages to the bank, because it is a huge pool of finance that can also be tapped into. And I think there's probably strategic ways that we as GCE can together can actually call on the bank to ensure that education remains, and human capital in general, but education specific, remains a priority. They've done a lot of work on learning poverty, and I think we can, we can capture some of that, and those resources either will go to education or they won't. And, I think some of that is genuinely within our control to influence. Would love to hear from them.
Absolutely. Thank you. Please go ahead, Meg, and everybody. Maybe we'll go to Lissy next with the mention about how can we help on preparations for the next GPE replenishment. But please, everybody, raise your hand or signal in the chat if you'd like to come in. Over to you, Meg.
No, yeah, thank you so much. And I think what Joanne has shared is so powerful, just in terms of driving home that advocacy to maintain and ensure that education has a central prioritization in these kind of financing landscapes, because we do know that there's all these competing demands. But I think I think the other strategy is to ensure that education is addressed within all these other areas. Like, we've seen a lot of integration on the climate impact. I saw the Thrive Coalition had a wonderful presentation yesterday on the impact on children of climate emergencies and how that impacts education and access to education. So there's a climate impact there, as well as last year, Jennifer, when we had Leanna Marr speaking on the International Day of Education. She highlighted organizations like ECW and GPE who are able to kind of get into spaces, more vulnerable and conflictual situations in Ukraine, to serve the needs of refugee populations and communities of youth and children who are impacted by climate and crisis. And so there's more agility in some of those organizations. And so that's why USAID likes to partner with GPE and ECW to kind of make sure that the needs of those refugee populations, the educational needs, are met. And that is also bringing it back to READ Act. That is also, a core component of the policy, that those vulnerable populations are addressed through U.S. policy and intervention. So I think it all kind of comes together. And I'd love to hear if Lissy has something to say too on behalf of GPE, because I know this is a real priority for the global partnership as well.
Sorry, I can't figure out my video, so I'm just going to chat. But it's great to be with everyone today. Thank you to Joanne for her incredible leadership, and to Results and GCE-US and all the partners on the call. We are so grateful to partner with you on an annual basis, and of course, as we gear up for our next replenishment. But just to reiterate what Joanne and Meg said, now is really the time to start engaging with champions on the Hill, and to build up those who have supported us in the past and led on resolutions, legislation, and letters, and to really create a groundswell of support in such a crowded environment where it's really hard to get the attention. And Meg, as you said, to make the links between education and climate, education and nutrition. There's so many cross-sectoral policies that are coming to the forefront, where education and schools are really an important hub for other interventions. And so educating Congress and the administration and helping make those links now will just lay the groundwork for when we really kick into high gear next year. So looking forward to the continued partnership.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Lissy, Meg, and Joanne, and grateful to Mark, Penina, and everybody in the chat box for sharing ideas. One of the questions raised and key points there is, there's the need to reevaluate how the inclusion of children with disabilities in the next phase of education financing is assured. And thank you on behalf of the World Federation of the Deaf for really making sure that, to ask, well, how will the needs of deaf children and all children that are not being fully included, form a priority for U.S. policy and funding. One opportunity that we see in April of this year in particular, that doesn't come up every year, is the USAID will be hosting a global education conference. Many of you have wonderfully helped submit proposals, and I think in the coming weeks, hopefully more information will come out. We also wanted to share with all of you a draft coalition calendar for 2024. And if there are items, it should be open source. for everyone to be able to add, in particular here. And I'll also just quickly screen share. Is that visible for everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, terrific. So you can see here we are in January, looking at coalition meetings, key advocacy and congressional calendars, and other key moments. Thanks to Lissy for flagging for us earlier this week, and I think just earlier today. Our colleagues in Italy were kicking off the G or Government 7 and the Civil Society or C7 processes, including education. A lot of those announcements come in January often, and so there's some real promising opportunities there. We would love, please add what you are planning, partner actions and plans, even if it's still tentative. And for example, our colleague Suzanne Berman wonderfully plans to help facilitate the next coalition meeting that we're proposing for February 21st. We'd love to hear from all of you about which items, for example, maybe there are key things coming up in these next few weeks, or we're reporting back on advocacy, new reports, new research, and the like. And then similarly, as we go into International Day of the Women in March, I don't know if often our colleagues at UNICEF USA do advocacy days around March. And the Results family often has a wonderful international conference in the summer months. Even if these are still tentative, it would be so helpful as we think as a coalition for people to add in which pieces you foresee, and what things we can be doing to really increase our impact together. Knowing that between now and December, right? There's so much to be done. So please feel free to correct if we have anything wrong in here. We know some of the things on the U.S. government front are a constant moving, target, in the sense of, Congress having invited the president to give the State of the Union in early March. So likely the president's budget request to Congress, we're hearing, would potentially come out around that timeline. But if there's anything else that, please add to this in particular. And then I just wanted to quickly open up the discussion on, this exciting new report that Joanne and Meg mentioned, Building on Strong Foundations, the U.S. role in tackling the global learning crisis. And as many of you can see, there's a great opportunity to think together. Maybe Meg, if you'd like to kick us off on this, how can we as civil society organizations and a global networking coalition use the recommendations from this new report to ensure that countries with the greatest need and higher levels of learning poverty are really prioritized for U.S. foreign aid to education, especially in this environment where we also really need to all work together and do everything we can to push for bold increased funding and fight back against any possible cuts as well. Over to you, Meg.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I mean, I think as Joanne kind of highlighted, this is such an important historical moment for us to be kind of raising even louder advocacy, and we can't back down from kind of the competing demands and issues. It's really an important time for us to kind of unite and be unified around the call to education. And so this report is based on interviews with experts and advocates, as well as a rigorous review of USAID's own work on early grade reading and literacy. So we've looked at their own reporting on that, and we've also spoken to experts who are engaged in learning more about, what more is needed, and kind of put it in an advocacy frame to advance recommendations to move forward to the next level to achieve even greater results and address the learning crisis, which, as we know, we've seen a push to get more and more children in school, which is wonderful, but we still need to see advances in learning. And you are familiar with this, so about learning crisis. Up to 90% of children in lower income countries not given the resources and work that they need to achieve learning outcomes by age 10. So this is a commitment that the US government and others made at TESS to reduce learning poverty and cut it by half by 2030. So I think we're backing behind that in terms of what more can the US do to address the learning crisis. And so specifically getting into the work of USAID and how they can strengthen the foundations that they have, but also to, for instance, work more closely with local partners in countries, local stakeholders, local researchers, and advance the localization agenda. So what we're looking for in terms of the advocacy community is really engagement in the report. Take a look at the recommendations. Let's have those conversations and see how does your awareness of what's happening in your domain, whether it's in a partner country, internationally, or in the US or another country, how can this report help to fuel your advocacy and bring in new partners to advocate for the right to education. So we're looking for conversations, we're looking for engagement. We're going to be engaging with USAID and have already started those conversations. We will be presenting the report at the conference, the USAID conference as well. And so there's a lot of opportunities now. And I think the more we can speak with a united kind of agenda and a united voice to some extent on what's needed in education in the sector, I think the more powerfully those voices will be heard.
Thank you, Meg. That's terrific. Any questions for Meg, Joanne, and colleagues on this new report, the recommendations and the like? We welcome all ideas, and especially as tied, between now and International Day of Education on the 24th of January. There's just, we were, many of us, including Marin, Suzanne, Dana, Meg, and others, we're just talking with key congressional leaders yesterday afternoon. And, the more we can, like Joanne said, really engage not just current champions, but those, that might be new. Education, we know, has really strong bipartisan support. And so it's just such an important time for us to be reaching out to our own representatives and engaging friends, networks, partners, you name it, to invite others to get involved. Suzanne, did you want to add anything on that front?
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, I think, we're doing everything we can to get particularly the READ Act passed. And of course, we'll start the appropriations process very soon, and would love engagement from as many people as possible. I think on the READ Act, we were very excited when it passed the Senate this fall, and we've been trying to build on that momentum and get it passed in the House. But, it goes to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and as we all know, there are a lot of foreign affairs going on right now. So it's hard to get that importance and that urgency. And I think, as Joanne and Meg have mentioned, it's when things are going ahead and seeming more urgent, we can't forget about the importance of education, particularly when education is important in all of these conflicts that are going on and don't seem to be stopping anytime soon. So, we're very hopeful that the bill will get marked up in the House Foreign Affairs Committee in the next markup. Granted, we don't know if something more urgent will take that role, but we would love any outreach we have. If you want to reach out, take an action for the International Day of Education, call your member of Congress. I'll put a list, I'll put a link in the chat, and you can check and see if your member of Congress is already on the bill. A thank you is always helpful. And then the message we're having is just pass the bill as soon as possible, because we want to minimize the lapse between the last bill's authorization and this one. And then we will be certainly in touch about the appropriations process and trying to keep that critical funding level as high as possible, knowing that it's going to be a tricky funding year.
Thanks, Suzanne. And we shared earlier the link to make that's super easy. It literally takes 30 seconds to reach out directly to members of Congress in support of READ reauthorization. We also have a full toolkit to make that easy if you'd like to use those templates within your own organization and advocacy. And we're happy to help people with, whatever way you'd like to reaching out locally, as well as in Washington, D.C., making calls, reaching out on social media. All of those make a tremendous difference.
Yeah,
And
just to add, Jennifer, yeah, so I mean, every member of Congress counts, and very important. We are doing some stronger advocacy with Representative McCall, who is in Texas, kind of between Austin and Houston, and then also with Chris Smith's district in New Jersey, and then also the Republican leaders who are in Louisiana. So if you have contacts, grassroots there, folks that would be interested in reaching out, those are who we're working with right now, just because they're kind of the people that can get bills to the floor and through committees. So I'll put my contact info in the chat, and if you have any folks that you think might be wanting to reach out, I'm happy to work with you or those individuals directly to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And everybody's amazing leadership and partnership here is so vital. Joanne mentioned earlier, as one of our founding board members, I've just been so delighted to be part of this movement. I think in my case, going back to 2008, when I worked for Save the Children, and we were, all involved in the One Goal campaign in 2010. So many efforts between now and then. The READ Act, like we've been talking about, is such a key piece. When we look at our funding chart tracking the international basic education funding over time, we've made tremendous strides, and it's hugely thanks to we're grateful that Marion Stein is at World Learning. Partners like her have worked on the Hill in key congressional champions offices, and we're continuing to grow that amazing network. I will, along with the sort of bureaucratic wheels, more info is coming, and we'll share it as soon as we can. But in these next couple of weeks, I will be going through a little bit of a transition. And I've just been so delighted to serve as executive director with GCE-US since the fall of 2015. You all are doing amazing work, and we're really excited for the growth to come. But while I will be, absolutely, Marion, thank you for your amazing work and leadership. But while I'll be starting in a new post where I hope to be able to work with many of you just in new and exciting ways, we are indeed looking for all partners to help and to get involved. And that could be leading future meetings, helping to share the news if you know of colleagues who might be a possible fit as an interim or a longer term executive director with GCE-US. And then also, this is just such an amazing group. You all truly do phenomenal work and bring just that amazing dedication and commitment. The work that we've been able to do together, not just across US government and across the United Nations, World Bank, IMF, but globally. Many of you are joining from a representation of the 100 plus countries where the Global Campaign for Education Network is active, from the local to the national to the regional to the global levels. And so rest assured, I will continue to be a part of this network and family, and cheering everybody on. But we would especially love everyone's help and jumping in, and we can take a look at that sort of 2024 planning calendar. For example, if there are speakers that you all think would be helpful for inviting in the future, to especially to advance our advocacy work, both from your own organizations, or if you want to put out and say, hey, we'd really like to hear from such and such person, or this team across US government, the World Bank, etc. All of that information would be really helpful. And then similarly, we're just really grateful to all our amazing student fellows, the full results team. Joanne, Meg, and Colin are joining us today. A lot of you, from World Vision to Childhood Education to International to AAE, to Ernestine's great work at AAEH, and the amazing work that BIM does. Don't want to leave anybody out. Thank you, Ram, for what you do. You all tremendously helped make this movement strong. So I'm just so grateful for this privilege and honor to work together, and really looking forward to the phenomenal things yet to come, as we ask for everybody working together in this key political time to get the READ Act reauthorization passed, make sure that funding is protected, and push for increases wherever we can, and to really work together, even in challenging times, especially in challenging times, to make sure that all children and youth around the world have access to quality, inclusive, universal education. Thank you so much to all of you for the shout outs. Maybe I'll pass to you, Joanne, if there's any sort of further remarks or any other thoughts that you wanted to share as we think about 2024 and beyond.
I mean, Jen, I think the thing I want to say, and you're seeing it you're seeing it in the chat, and this is just the beginning, but I think the thing I just want to say is like a huge thank you to you, a huge shout out to you for, your leadership, and for really building this coalition, building the strength of the coalition, your own like deep commitment, incredibly hard work, vision, and building the ability for us to address an array of really critical issues in a coordinated, aligned, powerful way. And just with a very small team, I mean, an amazing small team, but you've done really amazing work. So I think the thing I just want to say is thank you. And we, like other partners, are really committed to supporting GCE, supporting what's been built, supporting what you've built, and also hope to really continue to work with you. But immense gratitude, really.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Absolutely. We'd love to hear from everybody. Please dive in. Go ahead, Suzanne. Did you want to come in?
I was just going to say, just echo what Joanne had said, and just that, I know GCE-US has come so far under your leadership, and, it is not lost on any of us that you put your probably literal blood, sweat, and tears into the organization for the last 8 years. And just, I think that the whole, education community, and I'm sure all of the, the rippling benefits around the world from your advocacy is just really incredible. And just thank you for everything that you've done, and all the time and energy you put into the organization and to the cause.
Thank you so much. Really grateful to all of you, and would love to hear people's ideas on how can we make things even stronger through this transition. If anybody who's putting ideas in the chat, or able to, either on video or just by taking yourself off mute, please come in. You're more than welcome. So absolutely, yeah, we'll miss all of you tremendously. I wonder if it would be helpful, in addition to, as we think about the calendar and plans together, thanks to our colleague Kate, we would love to encourage everyone to join in here. Please let us know if this Jamboard link works for you all to access. And if that's visible. Yes? Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thanks for the responses. Great. So many of you shared, when you registered for this meeting, some ideas that have been, sparks added here. So reflecting on the work we've done together as a movement, and through 2023, assessing our collective work, what are you proud of as an organization, as a movement, global education advocate, and global education community? We've talked about that we've been in the midst of unprecedented challenges, but this is a great opportunity as well. You can click sticky note and then here on the left, and then jot down your thoughts, and then it will allow you to either add them in directly or connect them to other ideas here. Bim, please go ahead.
Yes, just want to say congratulations, Jennifer, for your new role. We really enjoyed working with you and engaging this much, very big network. This may be very unique and a strong network in the United States about global education for US. And personally, I'm very enjoyed working with you that your, efforts to include the, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And PDRC on behalf of PDRC International, last year we have shared the information about the discrimination of Dalit, and this year we get the justice from the Supreme Court. That why we say we internationally, GCE-US has influence to give the justice for excluded people and marginalizations and raise the issues at the policy level. So we enjoyed working together, and in future, thank you for your new role. Just want to take congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for the amazing work that you've been doing, and to everyone at PDRC, we're so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Good, and it looks like folks are adding in, which we are so grateful for. So, incredible partnership in U.S. facing advocacy on global education. So much amazing collaboration and collective work to keep the right to education front of mind. The basic education community is working so well as a team on READ Act reauthorization and appropriations. We mentioned the Ready, Set, Read congressional event for International Literacy Day last September, and also the event at Georgetown with USAID, State Department, PRM, and so many organizations collaborating before the Education Cannot Wait financing conference that occurred last February. Like Joanne said, passing READ reauthorization in the US Senate. Right now, there's literally, looking at the number of bills being passed, in previous congressional cycles, it's been in the hundreds. And unfortunately, right now it's literally, only in the 20 to 30 range. So it's really notable. And thanks to all of you for getting that passed in the Senate, and then absolutely the importance of really working to get it across the finish line. Thanks to somebody for adding increased attention to and action on education in emergencies, especially displacement and refugee contexts. And then from the Transforming Education Summit in 2022 to Georgetown 2023 event to the Ready, Set, Read events, GCE-US has been a leader and cutting-edge organization bringing together advocates on global education. Thank you. Anything else that folks would like to add in here verbally or by jotting this down on some of the things that you're proud of, accomplishments, things that we've been able to do together? And they can be, not just the deliverables, so to speak, but also the, things that we're doing here in terms of partnership building. Any and all ideas are welcome. All right, so and it looks like some folks are already thinking about what we can do this year and together and ahead. So brainstorming, what ideas do you have for collective action, advocacy, collaborations across GCE-US and our partnership and networks in 2024 and beyond? Feel free to, I love that Joanne, helped us think about the framing of the next GPE replenishment, which might not be until early 2026, but how can we help make sure that the campaigning and the champion engagement is really strong and growing? So we've please, we'd love to hear from everybody, ideas, things that you're planning or that you're thinking about, ways that GCE-US can help you, ways that these monthly coalition meetings can help feature the work that you're doing, and amplify your advocacy and campaigning. So we have a few ideas here, such as focusing our efforts to engage key legislators and pass READ, more collective action on inclusive education and continued emphasis on inclusion for children with disabilities, call-in days for appropriations and READ, absolutely, fight against potential funding cuts, strengthen access to education for refugees and children in conflict zones, and address issues that affect learning and well-being, whether in schools or in communities. And there's mention of looking at pollution, violence, and marginalization. Cultivating new and stronger champions in Congress. Absolutely, very much so. Yeah, thank you. Colin, did you want to come in? We'd love to hear from everyone.
Actually, I think that's Cricket logged in as me.
Oh, amazing. Cricket, please come on in.
Sure. No, I mean, I'm really excited about this year. I think we've started off with some really great news, especially around the fact that READ will get potentially marked up on the House Foreign Affairs Committee in February. And so we're really moving stuff ahead. But knowing that we've really just streamlined and made an incredible moves on our annual appropriations work over the years. You know, we're really, I think one of the things that GCE has done really well is helping to coordinate the entire education community on this. And, you know, Results has always been a part of that and will continue definitely to be a part of that, and will help lead however we can in making sure, you know, the annual approach stuff is continued, is regularly, like, and then we're keeping up with each other and the full community around, you know, finishing FY24 and moving on into FY25 in March. So very happy to help there. And yeah, I think building the early bipartisan support for GPE replenishment is a big one. And that's where our annual approach work actually really helps, because it kind of feeds directly into whatever's next on our campaigns and continuing to build up those champions.
Thank you so much, Cricket and Colin. Absolutely. Yeah. And if, you know, in terms of call-in days, times where Results and others are planning to increase advocacy and campaigning, please let us know where the rest of us can be helpful. It looks like folks have added ideas about making sure to hold USAID accountable through rigorous reporting and amplifying impact of US government foreign aid investments to basic education, mobilizing advocates to make sure READ gets passed, and then, as you mentioned, building early bipartisan support for GPE replenishment. That's terrific. Thank you. Keep the ideas coming, everybody, please. And in particular, you know, like Suzanne mentioned earlier, every voice makes a huge difference. If anybody would like to go through, we'd love to hear some feedback from you all about if training on appropriations would be useful, and you know, assistance with reaching out to congressional offices, the Results family. Many groups really have amazing resources on that, and so we'd be happy to help make sure that those can reach everyone, and everybody's voice can be heard. So please, absolutely, let us know what you would find helpful, and then if there's anything that hasn't fit as we think together about opportunities coming up, any other ideas. You know, several have mentioned you know, some of the connections between the partnership building that we're doing, and especially how important it is in partnership building and movement building in the global education movement. And the more we can make a small but mighty group, thanks to all of you, can make a tremendous difference. Any other ideas, reflections, like for example, on the US government accountability front, we'd love to hear, who you all would like to invite to how would you like to use future coalition meeting space? Is there somebody from the Center for Education at USAID or other folks that you'd like to hear from? Over this past year, for example, for Global Action Week for Education, or GAWE, last April and May, DAA Bama Altrea, who leads the inclusive and gender equity hubs, as well as the Children in Adversity Hub at USAID, engaged directly with us on ways to really decolonize global education financing and to create a much more equitable system for everyone. So knowing that so many policies, strategies, not just across USAID, but US government, are in the process of being updated and perhaps new updates for the next 3 to 5 years are in process for public consultation now and coming down the pike in future months. We'd love to hear from you all, who, either that you're already working with, or what's your dream of groups that and people that you'd like to hear from or engage with, where GCE-US can be helpful. We absolutely need to, would love to hear more on working with youth advocates to make education more inclusive and accessible. Please come in. We'd love to hear thoughts on ways we can be more supportive too. We're grateful to all of you for everything you're doing to make sure that student, teacher, youth voices, things that we're fully inclusive and really pushing for to make sure that those that are most deeply impacted are at those policymaking tables. And yeah, just a huge shout out to Maha, to Kate, to Angel, to Dana, to all the students and youth leaders that have been so active in this space. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to try to, not just in 2024, but beyond, to really make sure that we're pushing beyond just one person's having a 3-minute speech, but to really be a core part of that policymaking moving forward. Great. We're so grateful to all of you for sharing your ideas. We'd love to hear from everyone. Is there anyone who hasn't had a chance to come in yet? Not to put anyone on the spot, but please, especially if there are things that you and your organization are thinking about. Meg, great to see your cat. Looks like a wonderful, warm opportunity on a cold day. But yeah, Ed from the World Vision family, Casey, knowing the amazing work that Childhood Education International is doing. Anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, please come in. We'd love to hear from all of you, even if it's just interim or tentative ideas of the things that you might be planning over the coming weeks and coming months, and what would be helpful. What would you like to share with the GCE-US network of your work, and what would you like to receive back? What types of things would be useful as you're looking at upcoming opportunities?
Hi, everyone. I can jump in. I'm Casey from Childhood Education International. And I put a couple of notes in the Jamboard, so I don't have a whole lot else to add. Just want to say that we appreciate continuing to be able to engage and all the work that you all are doing, especially not, having sort of an advocacy position or focus within our organization. It's great to be able to collaborate with others and kind of jump in where we can. One thing I did just want to mention is that we are are in the process, and it's almost fully published, of putting out a special journal issue. We have a research journal that we publish, and we have a special issue this month that is focused on early childhood solutions and challenges in primarily in the Global South and with researchers from the Global South. So it's a really kind of exciting publication, and we're sharing on our social media. And when I have kind of the link to everything, I'd be happy to share out with everyone. I think there's some really interesting research coming out there that might be useful to others as well.
Casey, thanks so much. That's terrific. Yeah, please do share. And thank you to Edward for connecting with the World Vision advocacy team and for everything that they've been doing. We're just so grateful to all of you for the work that you're doing. We will be, Suzanne, do you want to share with folks kind of the next READ task force and sort of upcoming opportunities? No need to wait by any means. And Casey, we really appreciate, if organizations don't have advocacy staff per se, we are happy to join anytime and, help walk people through that quick process, right? To reach out congressionally. Everybody's actions make a huge difference. And please, everybody, let us know if you have other announcements or opportunities coming up, ways that you'd like to get involved. And then we have several READ specific and US government-wide advocacy meetings coming up in future weeks. Over to you, Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a READ reauthorization task force that meets every other week. We have just moved the meeting time to accommodate schedules. So it is now 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays. The next meeting is this coming Tuesday, the 23rd. Would love for anyone to join. I'll put my email in the chat again. If you're not on the list, let me know, and we can make sure you get those invites. We'd love folks to join. And the next couple meetings will be pretty critical as we apply pressure to try to make sure we actually get the bill marked up and moved to the floor in the House. So would love folks to join. And then, as I'm sure you know, there is an international basic education appropriations call, another kind of, task force of dedicated advocates that meets on the opposite weeks of the READ Act. And so that is on Tuesdays from 1 to 2, and the next meeting would be it was just this Tuesday, so I'm not sure what that date is, but what is that, the 30th perhaps? So would love for any of you to join, and we can make sure you're on this list if you're not, so just email me.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And yes, if you or colleagues would like to get involved, thank you, Suzanne. We're happy to get everybody connected. So with that, we're just so thrilled. Please join us in thanking Joanne and Meg and the entire results team for wonderfully getting us kicked off for 2024. And I'm just so grateful to all of you. Look forward to working closely together for smooth transition these next few weeks. And huge thanks to Maha, to Kate, to Angel, to Dana, to Suzanne, to everybody that made this happen for us to come together today. And we would love to hear from each of you. Please keep the ideas flowing on ways that you and your organization and partners would like to be involved. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jen. Thanks, everyone. It's
Thank
great
you,
to be with
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Good, Jennifer.